Welcome back into another episode of the Potato Finance Podcast, and this one's actually going to be a little bit different. This is actually the first remote one we're going to do. I'm super excited to do this. This is going to be more of a crypto one for you crypto kings out there, and I am with the biggest crypto king there is, Mr. Marvin. Marvin, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, I'm like super excited to have you on. I mean, I really have not done anything crypto related, and I have a bunch of people asking me crypto things, and I'm just kind of like, I mean, I don't really do a ton of crypto. I don't invest a ton of crypto, but you know, you are really into it, and so that's like a really big reason. I was like, you know, I gotta link up with Marvin. I gotta find the time. I know we live a couple hours from each other, but I'm like, we got to do it. We got to get on. You gotta get him on the podcast. So how about you just start off with a little bit about yourself, people that don't know who you are, kind of maybe how we know each other, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, so long story short, way back in the day before we were ever really into any sort of finance or investing or any sort of thing like that, Josh and I both were into powerlifting. So the powerlifting community, especially in New England, is pretty tight. So we would bump into each other at a bunch of different meetups and a bunch of different like competitions, and then you just start to develop this network. And we connected on Instagram, and we just had like a lot in common, and we had a lot of friends in common. And after that, we continued to live our lives, and you know, we both kind of grew in our different ways. And for me, I went from powerlifting into videography, photography, and that's what I do for my full-time business. And then as I continued to evolve and kind of like explore, I wanted to figure out a way to invest my money and turn my money into something greater, something that could be turned into generational wealth or something for the future of my life and my kids, so on and so forth. So that's where I really started to dabble into crypto. And before crypto, I actually was into the whole meme stock craze, where I really didn't know what I was doing, and I lost a lot of money along the way.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. I didn't understand the concept of patience and understanding what you're investing into. And I tried to do the whole swing trading my stocks and like selling them for profit. And I just found myself like chasing money, and where I saw money to be made. You know, when things are going up, you never want to jump in when things are going up. And I would be at a loss every single time. And I kind of had a conversation with myself and had to be honest, where I really didn't know what I was doing, and I kind of like dabbled into the whole Doge, which was a great place for me to start. And then as I began to research more and more into crypto and understand the fundamentals and what crypto really is and what it stands for, I started to really kind of like digging my teeth into, you know, this whole entire space where there's so much money to be made as long as you invest into the right projects. Just like stocks, everything goes up and down, but if you invest into something that you know will be worth down the road, you know, it'll be double what it is now, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, and you're just patient, then it changes your time frame and your perspective on most markets.
Right. It's crazy how people really don't understand how important this stuff is, because it's one thing to kind of like say, all right, I looked into this, I understand it, I don't want to do it. I mean, kudos to you, it is what it is. But a lot of people, they're very, and I talked about this on the last episode, I feel like they're very ignorant to the idea of turning their money into more money. Maybe not everyone wants to create generational wealth. I know I have mixed opinions about that for a lot of different reasons, because I feel like it's good to build your own thing. But at the same time, can I say it's a bad thing? No, not necessarily. But before we get more into, I guess, the crypto side of things, let's just talk about your photography business, because I think that's like awesome, and I think there's so many different things I'm really excited to get into on this podcast. But how did you, I guess, initially get into photography and filmmaking?
Yeah, so it really came down to like YouTube. I remember back in like 2014, there was a whole YouTube craze. Everybody was doing YouTube, and I saw my brother begin his YouTube channel, and he was filming his weight loss journey and powerlifting. And I remember at the competition just starting to think to myself like, whoa, that's really, really cool. I want to give it a shot. And I started with my iPhone, I think it was like an iPhone 4 or 5 and a selfie stick, and I just began vlogging and getting comfortable to talk in front of a camera, kind of going off the cuff, improvising, and developing my ability to kind of speak on camera and being comfortable on camera. And then as that continued to evolve, you know, people would catch me at the gym with my phone or my camera once I bought my first camera. and ask me, hey, do you do commercial photography or do you do commercial videography? I really started in video, and it's the whole concept of the snowball effect, where you have one client and then you show off that project and then somebody else sees it. And then word kind of spreads like wildfire. And then people start asking, hey, do you do weddings? And you have to kind of, buckle in and say like, okay, maybe I've never done it, but you know what, like the skills that I've learned from these previous projects will translate over to something else. And then, year after year, event after event, and project after project, you start to develop this skill set that can kind of evolve and transform. And then by 2017, 2018, I kind of wanted to also dabble into photography. And with photography, I was not prepared for whatsoever. And I remember I tried for 2 or 3 months, and then I just gave up because I really didn't think I was suited to do photography. I thought I was just bound to only do video. And then by Christmas time, I said, you know what? I'm really going to go all in. And I'm glad that I did, because you know what? I remember with my Instagram, like 5 years ago, I would get 20 or 30 likes and I'd be like, oh my God, like this is awesome.
I'm famous.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm going to be so famous on like Boston Instagram or whatever. And you know what? Like, I just continued to do it because I was taking photos of my shoes or just Waltham or just random stuff or my travels. And I just started to kind of develop an eye for it. And I was like, whoa, like there's a lot of similarities between photo and video. And then again, the same thing happened with video. I started with like one photo shoot. I started doing photo shoots for free. I asked people at my gym, because there's some like good looking people in my gym. I was like, oh, like it's probably easier to like, it's easier to take photos of good looking people. So I was just like, hey, I'll do free photo shoots, whatever, meet me on Moody Street. And that's how I developed my portfolio. And then, I got my first client. I think I got paid like $75 for like the photo shoot, and I was like so excited. I was like, this is crazy.
Must
like
have been an awesome feeling.
Yeah, like you get your first client, and like to this day, my first client is still like one of my biggest fans, and like we still do shoots. But you kind of develop that and you build it, and then I was working in higher ed. I thought that was going to be my life, and then life finds a way to surprise you, and everything kind of takes a turn like for the better. Like when you least expect it, and then next thing I know, I'm working in social media, and now I work as a full-time creative, and it's just amazing. It's been a crazy journey. It's one that I never would have guessed, because like I went to school for exercise, and I have my master's in management, but I work full-time in creative. So it's crazy to see how life turns out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually incredible that you were able to build all of those skills. Now, you used to have a YouTube channel, right? Or you still do? There are still videos up there?
Yeah, so I use my YouTube channel like loosely for content for my clients to share with them. If you go on YouTube, I'm sure you could find hundreds. I think I have like over 350 like vlogs of my life on YouTube, just hanging out there.
Wow.
I would film videos every other day on YouTube. I was so consistent for like 2.5 years, but it was a burnout. Like for me, it was just like, you know what, like my body is getting beat down from powerlifting and like not sleeping enough, and my full-time job and editing and my master's degree. Like it was just so much. So like I stopped doing vlogs, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna focus on my clients. And that worked out fantastically for me. And then I also focused on Instagram because I was building up my photography. So it kind of like my attention from YouTube translated over to Instagram, and just posting consistently and just being very active there.
Now, do you think you'd ever consider posting on YouTube again, or you think nails in the coffin, like you're done for good?
No, I think that I will be returned back to YouTube in a different manner.
Oh, you heard it here, folks. He's coming back. The Crypto King is coming back.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been dabbling with the idea. I'm flirting with the idea. So like I had a podcast before called Cinemania, which I had so much fun with. I interviewed different people in different just different avenues of business, just kind of discovering, what they did, what they do, and how they got to be where they are. And I enjoyed that, and it was a lot of mentality, kind of like in the terms of like how to like motivate yourself, and it was fun, but I also found it to be pretty exhausted and repetitive. And then I also decided to try and do a video game YouTube channel where I reviewed games, which I love video games, but I just found it to be so long and extensive, and journalism is really, really difficult. I'm not a good writer. So I was like, man, what can I do that I love? And I was like, well, I'm like, outside of photography and video, I'm highly invested into like crypto and just what's going on in the news. Like ever since I've started to like really, really get deep into crypto, I've never been more in tune than what's going on in the news. And it's so sad to say that, but like I didn't really care about the news or how things in the government or just politics like affected my life, or just like what's going on behind closed doors in businesses. Like I didn't care about banks. Right. I didn't care what banks did. And now that like I have a little bit more of a pulse of what's going on, I'm like, whoa, this is something I'm passionate about because I'm financially, emotionally, and mentally invested in this. Like I could talk about this all day, and my poor fiance has to hear me talk her ear off
all day.
All things crypto all day. And I'm like, you know what? I should just start a podcast. And I started to think, I'm like, well, if I have a podcast, like all I have to do is really turn on a camera, because what I do with my podcast, I do a one take, like 15 minutes, like talk about what's going on in the news, talk about what's going on in terms of like the market cap and just like what's going on. Why not just film it? So I think I'm going to start up a crypto YouTube channel and just discuss what's going on in the world, what I think, and just have fun. And I think that would be my return to YouTube. If I'm going to do it, I would do it that way.
I honestly, that is exactly what I was going to recommend, because the thing with podcasts, it's very hard to grow because Spotify and Apple Music don't necessarily have, I guess, an algorithm per se. But the thing is with YouTube, obviously there is an algorithm. So I personally think, and I just post all like my podcast on YouTube. And that gets where the majority of the views come from, ironically enough. Like if I go look at my download in the analytics from Apple Music and Spotify, it's not nearly as, I guess, large as it is with YouTube. So I think really there's nothing bad that can come out of it, especially if you aren't already in favor with the algorithm and you aren't doing anything else. Just like you said, turning a video on and just posting that podcast on YouTube, nothing bad can come out of it at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and that kind of goes back to like what we were saying earlier, how like some skills just translate. Like I'm glad that my first podcast, it wasn't a failure. I just found that I didn't love it. And same with my YouTube channel, like I kind of fell out of love with it. And same could say with the video game channel. Like I realized things that I'm not good at, and I'm the type of person that if I'm in love with something, I go all in. Photography, I went all in. Video, I went all in. And like with what I'm trying to do with crypto, and for my understanding, like I want to go all in on that as well. And I've learned through, going and getting my bachelor's degree in something that I don't use, getting a master's degree in something that I don't use, going into an industry that like I just didn't love. The biggest like story and takeaway that I've learned from all of that is like if you focus on things that you love, the world just kind of gravitates towards you in that way, and somehow it works out. Everything that I've done is because I've loved it, and it's worked out. And it's really, really weird, but it's just such a coincidence that like I found photo and video as something that I love. And I remember there was a point where people were like, it's a hobby, like it will never be a full-time job. And it's just turned out to be the complete opposite, where it's actually now my full-time job. Like I've been hired to do it full-time as a creative. Like my title is a creative.
That's awesome, dude. That's so inspiring.
It's awesome. And like that's why like I rep Johnny Cupcakes. Like Johnny Cupcakes is my favorite brand ever. Like ever since I was 14 years old, I bought into it because like their tagline is like do more of what makes you happy. And I think that is probably the strongest and the most honest thing I can ever like follow. Like if that was my North Star, that would be it. Like if you do more of what makes you happy and you just project that into the world and you're just genuine about it with no expectation, things work out somehow. Like you could have a podcast or a YouTube channel like talking about how much you love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and kind of rate different peanut butters and jelly sandwiches. There will be someone out there. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a YouTube channel about that. Like there is somebody out there who loves something as much as you do. And if you find that niche, it works out somehow.
That's actually super inspiring, and I agree completely. And, I went through this with someone recently, and someone that was very close to me, and they basically looked at this YouTube channel and this podcast as more of a hobby. and it really took me by surprise, and I really didn't know what to think of it. And it wasn't like just a random friend, it was someone that was very, very close to me. And it honestly really hurt that people that even are that close to you necessarily don't believe in your mission and what you're trying to build and what you're trying to accomplish, which really, at the end of the day, I feel like just goes back to you. And it's like, if you believe in something, if you think you can do something, go do it. Like, literally go do it and do not wait, because there is so much out there that can be built. There's so many things out there that can be discovered. And just because you have a crazy mission doesn't mean that you're crazy. Like, you could be like the one to find all of these things. But let's kind of get back on topic here. Let's go back to your photography side of the business. So you taught yourself everything about photography and filmmaking, right?
Yep.
That's, first of all, that's incredible, because I preach to every single person when they're just like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, go figure it out. Like, and for some people it's not that easy, but there are ways to figure it out. So how did you go about teaching yourself all of these things, from editing a music video, editing a wedding, color grading, all these different things? Why don't you dive into a little bit of detail on that?
Making a lot of mistakes. That is the best piece of advice. Make a lot of mistakes. Like, drop the ball, make mistakes, like, and learn from them. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, there was a lot of firsts for me. There was a lot of firsts for my first music video. There was a lot of firsts for my first wedding, my first corporate gig, my first like 5-digit like contract. Like there's a lot of firsts, and it's nerve-wracking. But I think the biggest thing is to like educate yourself, practice a lot on the side. Like, of course, like when you go and work for a client, and if it's like a bigger client or your biggest client, you know, prep ahead, do your research, see what other people have done, gain inspiration. But if these people are hiring you, and I think this is the biggest thing too, like, borrow that confidence. People forget to borrow confidence. When you don't believe in yourself, borrow the confidence from the people that do. When people are actively choosing to put money in your pocket, it's because they believe in you. They believe in you for a reason. They are choosing you to capture their special day. They're choosing you to work with them. They could choose anybody. Borrow that confidence. Like, you may not have it, but know that they want you there for a reason, whether it's financial advice, whether it's, you know, they want you to work on their car or paint their house. Like, they're choosing you because they believe in you. And don't forget that. That should be the #1 indicator of, you know what, like, you're on the right path. They could have gone with anybody. They could have gone with somebody who's been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years, but they're choosing you because they believe in you, and you need to take that in and use that as weaponry, that defend yourself. Use that for the gigs that come after that, because this gig that may be your largest gig in 5 years is gonna be just a stepping stone for what's to come. So educate yourself, and remember that if somebody's hiring you to do something, it's because they believe in you. And don't forget that. Don't cut yourself short. Like, remember that you love this, and go even harder for them because they trust you. So you should be going all in for them as well.
Right. Now, a couple of things here. First off, when you were teaching yourself all this stuff, how were you able to, I guess, put yourself on a schedule? Because I'm guessing when you first started learning about all this stuff, the color grading, the editing, the filming, all of those things, you were working a full-time job. I'm sure you had other obligations as well. You were probably into powerlifting back then, which obviously, like we were talking about before we started recording, took a lot of our time, which we're very happy to have back these days. I guess you can put it that way. So how did you really make the time to learn? Because I think that's a big issue with a lot of people. They say, I want to learn this, I want to do this, I want to do that, but at the end of the day, they have trouble making a schedule and sticking to it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it comes down to, like, how badly do you want it? Like, we all have 24 hours in a day. Like, what are you going to do to make the most out of it? When I was teaching myself video and photo, my schedule was this. I would have to be at my office by 8:30 a.m. and my commute was 45 minutes. So I'd have to be out of bed at the latest 6:30, you know, get breakfast, get everything ready to go, and drive. And then I would work from 8:30 to 4:30. I have an hour commute back. So, you know, I was working out at that time, and I had my master's degree. Like, let's say I had class from 5:30 to 9 o'clock at night. My only times I had was waking up at like 4 or 4:30 in the morning. I'd watch a YouTube video or two, go to the gym and work out, get dressed, get ready, do my commute, and then I have an hour lunch break. And I have coworkers that can attest to this. On my lunch break, I would be editing videos, watching YouTube. I would so at 12 o'clock, everybody would go to the lunchroom and talk and have fun and get together and just catch up on life. I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to focus on my craft. So they would come out, laugh, and joke, and they would support me. They're incredibly supportive. But they would see my early stages of YouTube, oh look, I did the stop motion effect, or da 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 da. And they thought it was cute. It was fun. I would just record my travels, and I would just make time for it. Any free time that I had, I dedicated to that. And I remember on my lunch breaks, there's a YouTube video that's Street Photography 101 in black and white. And that was the first time that I really dabbled into composition. I was like, whoa, this is 40 minutes, and to the average person who is watching this is probably extremely boring. But to me, it was the most fascinating thing, because I didn't fully understand composition and the rule of thirds and kind of lining up the shot. I would just kind of free shoot and do whatever. But going in with a game plan, and that's where I was like, okay, there's layers to this. And then I came across Zach Kravitz, and he had a whole course in cinematography, and I was in his first course, and I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna invest in myself. The money that I made on the side from these gigs that I have, there were pennies and things like that. I just had it laying around. I'm like, I should put this money to work rather than buying something stupid like a pair of shoes or a nice shirt or something. You know what? I should take that money, invest it, because I know what I'll learn in this course will serve me for the next 8 years of my life. And thank God I did, because it has. Had I not jumped into a course and invested in myself, watched these YouTube videos, made the time for that, I would be up till 1 or 2 in the morning, or the reverse. I would go to sleep at 10 or 11 at night from editing, and then I would have a dream of something that I wanted to edit, and then I'd wake up at 2 in the morning, my heart's racing. I'm like, you know what? I need to just start filming right now. I need to start editing right now. I need to watch this course over again. And I went months with very little to no sleep. It wasn't healthy, but it was just it didn't feel unhealthy because I was all in it. My heart was on fire. It was just oh, this is something I just have to do. And you just get into this tunnel vision where time and space really doesn't affect you. You kind of just lose track of that. You just are in that state of flow. And I just made 6 to 8 months of just looking back was really, really tough. But when I was in it, it didn't feel that way, because I just loved it. And I just made any free time that I had dedicated to filming, editing, and learning.
Wow, that is actually very inspiring. That is definitely the most entrepreneurial thing I've heard in a while. That is absolutely awesome. And I go through similar things like this too. I'll be editing videos on my lunch break, or even if I'm driving somewhere, sometimes I'll just send myself a voice message of an idea, or type something out really quickly. So the other day I was at the gym, and I was working out, and all of a sudden I just got this video idea, and I'm like, I could use this bullet point and this bullet point. So I just pulled out my phone and started typing the whole thing in. And before I knew it, 10 minutes later, I had essentially a whole video planned out. Literally, I just had that idea. So, and I don't think people take advantage of those little moments. I think people, a lot of the times, they're like, oh, I only have 10 minutes, I only have 15 minutes, is it really worth me getting started? And sometimes it might not be, because I think sometimes you really need to be in the mode and be in the mood for it, because sometimes it's all right, sit down, I gotta get this ready, I gotta get that ready. Maybe that's not worth it. But the thing is, if you have an idea and you only have 10 or 15 minutes, I think that can definitely be executed on a very high level and a very high degree, personally.
Oh,
but
no, totally.
But how frustrating was learning all this stuff? Because I know some of the edits that I've done in my videos, they have been kind of frustrating. It's really cool when it's all said and done, but I've spent hours before on a 20-second clip, and it's like I said, it's great when it comes out, but doing it, I'm just I don't understand why this isn't coming out the way I want it to.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's still frustrating to this day. There's so many times where I get creator's block or creative block, or sometimes I need to walk away from my computer for a day or two, because I'm on my computer. Especially now, I'm on my computer more than ever before. I'm editing photos, I'm editing videos. I'm in animation, so I'm editing animation, and just understanding the timing that goes into these things. And like when you get to the point where it's like you need everything to be perfect, you become hypercritical. And like there are times where I've edited videos and I just delete it all over again because I hate it. Like you just kind of get warped into this like mindset where it's like if it's not exactly what you imagine, then you just like despise it. And you know, I've gotten better at that over time, and it comes with practice and developing like a schedule and timing around that, and giving yourself the flexibility of, you know, not everything has to be done right now, especially if it's something, it's a creative project. Giving clients that extra time, you know, maybe a project could be taken, it could be finished in like 2 weeks, but giving yourself that flexibility of 4 weeks where, you know what, I'm gonna go really, really hard for 4 days editing, give myself 3 days away from the project to come in with a new set of fresh eyes, see what you think, see how it feels, see how it flows, and then if you have to scrap it or just adjust it as needed. But yeah, it's still frustrating. I mean, even when you're on set, when things aren't going as planned, like it happens all the time. I was just shooting a music video, and like we had a whole scene where we were gonna have a performance in front of a mirror, but then I set the mirror up and then I turn around and it just fell and it cracked all over the place. It was a nightmare.
7 years bad luck.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, this is great. Like, you know, and it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. We're like, oh, wait, we have pieces of broken mirror. Like, we can actually work with this because the song is about like being broken. Like, oh, like let's play with this idea and mentality. So like learning to be flexible and giving yourself time to breathe in between projects, especially with editing. With color grading, with timing, with music. Finding music is a nightmare sometimes. Sound effects, overlays. You know, being flexible with yourself and knowing when to stop, walk away, give yourself some time to just get some fresh air. And you never know. For example, I had another project where I thought I knew what I was going to do, and we were starting to watch this show on Netflix about cooking and grilling and like deep fried food. But it was one of those things where like I'm watching the show and I'm really into it, and my fiance is like, wow, you're really, really into this. And I'm like, no, just like their transitions and how they use imagery and just how they shoot this is so incredible. I'm shooting this video for, you know, a salon, and I'm watching deep fried food, but there's so much that like I could learn from this and translate into that. So like also giving yourself that time to take time to get inspired, whether it's through video games, movies, or Netflix. Like that is also good for your creative brain. Like giving yourself the opportunity to watch something completely different, and you'll find that sometimes that is the most inspiring things for your projects that move forward.
Now, talk to me a little bit about how you deal with, I guess, writer's block, you could say, or creative blocks, because I think a lot of people have this issue, including myself from time to time. There's times I'll start working on a video and I won't have any creative ideas, or maybe I can't even come up with the idea for a video, or even with this podcast, it's like I try to get a few done ahead of time just in case I have, you know, technical difficulties, or maybe I can't find a guest or any of those things. And there's been times I'm just like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know if it's possible for me to get this video. I don't know if it's possible for me to find a guest and coordinate a time for my next deadline. But somehow the gods bring it together in some crazy way. I don't even understand how it's possible. Like, I will literally go a week and I'm just like, I can't find anyone to come on the podcast. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden it's like I have 4 guys lined up like the next day. Like crazy. Same thing with video editing. I can't have any idea. I will literally stare at my notebook. I'll stare at my computer for like an hour. Nothing happens. I'll get frustrated. I'll walk away. And then bam, the next day I have 3 ideas like ready to go and I'm editing them. So why don't you talk about how you deal with that?
Yeah, for me, I just have to do something completely different and just not remotely like related to video. Especially when I'm like struggling creatively, or I'm just like, I can't like figure out this color, or I can't figure out, you know, what I want this video to feel like. I find that just, you know, whether it's playing video games, going for a walk, or even just you find inspiration in the places you least expected. And that's what I found agree. Every single time, you know. I could be on a walk or at the gym and have a conversation with someone, and they just say something completely unrelated, or have no idea what I'm like going through creatively, and they just say something that just sparks this, oh, I never thought of that. And also being open to people's criticism or ideas and thoughts. I have a lot of friends in the creative space, and sometimes just having somebody take a look at it and they're like, hey, have you thought about this? Or what if you just move this over? Like, when you're really into the edit and you're really, really focused and you're just looking at one thing over and over again, when you're too close to it, it can actually prevent you from moving forward. And having somebody else's perspective and being open to it is incredibly helpful. The amount of times where, you know, my fiance will say something and say like, oh, why don't you do this? And like, initially, like, you could think like, oh, like, you're not editing, you don't know what you're talking about. And then if you kind of take that ego out, or just that part of you where you think you know everything, and realize that, whoa, like, this person's perspective is actually completely different from mine, and it resonates differently, and they see it differently, maybe I should be more open to that as well. So, you know, for me, finding inspiration in places where you least expect it. So play a video game, go for a walk, try something different. Honestly, trying something different, something that you've never done before, is probably some of the best things ever, because it's a brand new experience to you, and how you feel when you're in that experience is gonna change how your outlook on many different things. So I would say, like, just go out there, be uncomfortable, and try something different, and you'll find inspiration in places where you least expect it. And being open to other creatives' criticisms and thoughts and opinions, or just people who may not be completely related to creative at all, and just listen to what people have to say, because people's ideas, though they're different from you, could actually be way better than you ever could have expected, and just be open to that. When I'm on a shoot and I think I know what I'm doing, someone can say like, oh, maybe we should try that scene again, but from this angle. You know, at first you're like, no, I have this whole plan and idea, and then you go out and do it, and you're like, whoa, that was actually way better than I had ever planned. So just going in with that open mindset and willingness to accept other people's ideas and creative outlooks is so helpful, and it'll make you a better creative down the road as well.
I think that's so cool, and I think that's so important, because the ego thing is something I think I've struggled with in the past, and something I've definitely gotten better at. Yeah. And it's been in all areas, whether it's sports, whether it's, you know, editing, whether it's stocks, finance. Sometimes I've just in the past been like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And I'm just like, well, even if they don't, what if I'm just missing something? What if I'm missing a great point? What if I'm missing some other great, you know, idea that they could have just, I guess, really forced me to have some sort of epiphany for? Yeah. And I do really like what you said. You find inspiration in the places you don't see. And I kind of compare that to, I guess, relationships, where you say you'll find your next relationship when you're not looking for it. So just focus on yourself and let the cards fall where they may. And I think those two really kind of go hand in hand. I think you can really correlate those two things. And yeah, dude, that was, for anyone listening, I really think you should take a good hard look at that. I might even take that clip and put it right in the front, the part of that, because it's the same thing. It's just whenever you're not looking for it, you might be talking to someone, maybe you're just walking, maybe you're just listening to some sort of podcast, you just get inspiration. And that's how this podcast started. I'm sure you're familiar with Matt Diavella. Well, I took his YouTube course, and as I took that YouTube course, he said something. I don't remember what it was. I could not tell you what it was. It might have just been something about the podcast he used to run, but I got the inspiration. I'm like, I should start a podcast. I'm like, because although I'm putting out quality content I think is great, I can also get a second opinion from someone. Like, for example, this is a good example of that, because I'm not big into crypto for a lot of reasons, but you are. So maybe by the end of this, I'll have higher conviction of crypto once we get into that, once we get to this photography section, and maybe I'll feel comfortable putting a portion of my capital into crypto. So we'll see if you can convince me and sell me on that in a little bit here. But why don't you talk about the biggest projects you've worked on and the favorite ones that you've worked on?
Okay, so I think my favorite project that I've worked on, I would say like working with Johnny Cupcakes, and I think that was more of an emotional thing for me. When I first got hired for Johnny Cupcakes, and like recently I just did a photo shoot for Johnny Cupcakes, it was one of those things where like I've been, you know, supporting this brand because I love the artwork, I love the style, I love the message behind it, and I love what the brand stands for. Since I was 13 or 14 years old, and I'm turning 30 next year, which is crazy. Like, I've been following and a part of this journey for half of my life, literally, which is like absolutely crazy. So for me to kind of bring it full circle has been a blessing. I mean, I would never have imagined in a million years that I'd be in a position where I get to work with one of the brands that I love. Like, it's just insanely crazy to me that, you know, life works the way it does. You know, you do what you love, you post it and share it with the world, and it turns out that people like your style, even though it's very different from everyone else's. But that's the thing, when you don't care and you go in with zero expectation, I think there's a lot of people who do, you know, they want to start this Instagram or start a podcast or a YouTube channel with the expectation of like, I want to do this full time and I want to be rich and, you know, I'm going to be wealthy and then I'm going to buy a Lambo. But if you are genuine about it and you're passionate about it, like the way that you talk on the podcast, like you're passionate about it, like you do this because you love it. You're not doing this because, you know, there is a sponsor behind the scenes that's pushing this agenda. Like, when you genuinely love something, people can feel that. And that's kind of like been my guiding star for all of my life. Like, if I feel that there's something calling me and I'm gravitating towards it, I need to follow that. There's something there. So when Johnny Cupcakes reached out and they're like, hey, we want to do a shoot or we want to do a video, and they booked me again for like October, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I have so much fun at these shoots. These people are goofy and fun, and that's kind of like who I am. Like, that's my personality. Like, I don't take life too serious because I think you shouldn't. Like, that, their brand and like my way of navigating life just works perfectly. That is probably my favorite thing, and like it's been my favorite client. Now, in terms of my largest client, it was a few years back, and this year too, I've been contracted by like these larger agencies like corporate. And corporate is boring, but also the highest paying gigs. Like, people, they will sign off on anything and it's crazy. And like, I remember when I first saw like my first 5-digit contract, I was like, holy crap. Like, you know, what I just made in the course of like these 2 weeks is like a quarter of what I make in a salary. And at that time I was like, this is insane. And like, even to this day, like now my gigs are like 6x what I used to charge, you know, 3 years ago. And like what I charge hourly now is like what I charge almost like 10x what I did like 4 years ago.
That's
and
incredible.
Like, the bigger the gigs get, the more responsibility there is, and there's a lot of weight on the shoulders, like, to deliver. But again, like, you develop that kind of intuition and confidence, and it's not to be confused with cockiness. Like, where you're confident of, like, you're hiring me and I know I will deliver. Like, there is no question about that. Like, what I tell my clients now is that, like, my job is not only to be your photographer and videographer, but also to alleviate any sort of doubt or anxiety that you have on your day, whether it's your sold out show or, you know, your wedding day or whatever, like, or a representative of your business and company. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna provide you exactly what you want. You have a vision. I'm gonna find a way to bring that vision to life. Like, I have that confidence now. And back in the day, I didn't, because I hadn't done 100 projects. Like, now I have this whole entire arsenal of different style of videos, whether it's for real estate or commercial or music or branding or social media or influencer, like anything like that. Like, I've done it. And like, now it's getting to a point where it's like, you know, people want to bring me to the restaurant for free just because, like, of my social media. Like, you develop that confidence and that following, and people, they see that and they respect it. And just like with time, it builds up to be its own thing. It almost becomes its own entity and creature. So with that being said, like, moving forward with the next couple of gigs that I have, they continue to grow more and more and more. And it's really exciting because now I'm in a place in my life where I'm like, okay, how can I grow this? How can I preserve my wealth? And what's next for me? And I have no idea, which is really exciting. Like, waking up every day and it's a new adventure.
That's awesome. And I think that's so inspirational. And to anyone that's really listening to this or watching this and really is thinking about giving up, or maybe they're just frustrated and they're very early on, like, I think Marvin's a great example of just keep pushing, just keep innovating, just keep being you, just keep doing you, and eventually you are going to push through. Now, how long have you been doing this full time?
I've been doing all creative full time since so we're in 2017. So I've been 4 years full-time creative. So when I was an admission counselor, I would recruit students to go to college. And I remember when I was in the period of that time, that's when I was in the peak of my YouTubing. So like, I had this offer by a YouTube channel called Aesthetics, RIP, to go to New Mexico for 3 weeks and film for them. And
I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah, so that's a whole different story. But I remember I was working at admission, and September is the time when you start to leave and travel, and they wanted me to go in August for 3 weeks. And I remember having the conversation with my supervisor, like, hey, I want to use 3 weeks of my vacation in August to go and film. And I remember, like, they're gonna fire me or something. Like, they probably think that I don't take this seriously. They see that my inspiration and what I put as a priority is somewhere else. And I'll never forget the dean of admission like sat me down in a room. He just wanted to have a meeting with me one-on-one, which never happens, never ever happens. Like,
never a good feeling.
No. And I sat down with him, and he was like, how's everything going? I was like, he's like, so I heard you're going to New Mexico for a couple of weeks. And he was like, yeah. He's like, how do you feel about admission? And I was just like, I mean, it's fine. Like, I like my job. Please don't take it. And I remember him throwing down this like red envelope on the desk. And I was like, oh, well, this is it. Like, it was good. It was fun while it lasted. And it was actually a promotion to assistant director of social media, because they saw like how passionate I was about video, photo, and social media. And they wanted me to really focus in on that. So like, I had been promoted over to marketing, which was like a very different change. And then while I was there, like, I focused in on video and photo and getting my drone license and going all in on that. And, you know, I was way more involved with their social media than video. And I was like, you know what? I really just want a job where I can focus in on video and photo. And then I found this opportunity somewhere else to do that full-time as a senior role. And I was like, whoa, how cool would it be if my full-time job was just photo and video and now animation? And I applied for it, and I got it. And it was crazy because, you know, looking back now, I remember my supervisor saying, like, they had interviewed people with 10, 20, 30 years of experience in photo and video. And, you know, I was the youngest one out of all of them. Like, I was the one with the least amount of experience. But they were just like, there was a fire, and your creative outlook is completely different from everyone else, your storytelling. And the video that got me my job was a project that I did for my cinematography course that I paid, the one that I talked about earlier was at Kravitz. And it was the state of mental health. And I talked about, you know, the anxiety and depression that I went through when I was going through a very difficult time in 2016. And that was the video that I did for fun. I filmed that in a course of, I think it was 2 hours. I remember getting out of work, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this video. I was wearing like a white t-shirt, and I was super sweaty. It was a hot summer day, and I just went down the street and I filmed, and I did it because like I just loved it. Like, I put my heart and soul into it, and it was a very personal video for me. And that was the video that they watched. And I remember putting it on my portfolio. I was like, I don't know if I want to put this on there. But that was the one that they were just like, we hadn't seen anything that made us feel anything in a very long time. And it worked out that way. And that's why I continue to say, like, anything that you feel that is calling your name, like, maybe it won't make sense when you make it, or like in a month, or in a year, or 3 years in my case, but it worked out somehow. Like, it just, I'm glad that I did what I did. I'm glad that I put my heart on the line, and I was very, very vulnerable. And I was just happy that I did it, because had I not gone all in, you know, I wouldn't be in the job that I am right now, where I'm very, very comfortable and very, very happy, and I love what I do every single day.
That's awesome. Now, before 2017, how long were you doing this part-time on the side, those, you know, 4 a.m. mornings, those late nights, those sporadic ideas, getting up in the middle of the night editing type deals? Like, how long were you doing that?
I was doing that for like every single day for 2 years. Like, I would travel on the road, like as an admission counselor, like going to Connecticut, Texas, Oklahoma, California, Chicago. I would film every single day and edit every single day. If people want to find my YouTube channel, I think it's just Marvin Sandoval at this point, or I don't even know. But you can go through a period where there's a video every other day. So I'm filming every single day and editing the other day. So I did that for 2 years, 2.5 years straight, before
Wow.
I got promoted to assistant director of social media. And that's when things kind of pulled back a little bit because I was focusing on other projects and videos, client work, and my full-time job. But yeah, I remember like skipping courses in my master's degree or editing in the middle of my master's degree. Like I'd be in the back of class editing videos like in silence, not paying attention to my class whatsoever. I was just going like ham for like 2.5, 3 years straight, because I knew that was what I wanted to do.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. Now, how did that take a toll on your relationships, with any relationships, whether you were with a significant other at the time, with your brother, your family? How did that affect that?
Yeah, I honestly don't know how the women that I dated at that time dealt with me. Honestly, I will say this: they were very, very supportive, and the people that I dated, like, they were nothing but good to me. Honestly, I did not deserve those people in my life. They were way too good for me, and too good for me, and too good to me. Just because I was very selfish. I mean, the thing is, I had little time. I had very, very little time during those years of my life because I was working full time. I was powerlifting, which takes like 2 or 3 hours of your day out of your life. I was filming. I was editing. I would find ways. That's the thing. Like once you get very efficient with video editing, you know, there's shortcuts. You just know how to move fast. You get very, very fast at editing. Like that's my specialty. I'm very, very fast at editing, especially now that I know a lot more than I did back then. But it took a huge toll. I mean, I would get in fights with my significant others about how much I was editing or filming, or how much they didn't want to be on camera, or how often I was bringing my camera. You know, don't bring your camera on a trip, bring your camera on a trip. But there were people that I dated that were very supportive of it too, that were just like, hey, you know, if he loves this, then we should let him. Not we. I wasn't dating like 3 girls at once, but they would be like, you know, like they were all very supportive, incredibly supportive, and I'm very thankful for that. But you know, I was too tired to do things. Like I was too tired to go out for dinner, or like, you know, if there was a family event, like I would skip out on it. So there were times where I was very, very selfish, and you know, it sucks, but it was what it was when it was. But yeah, it took a toll. I'm glad that my family was always supportive of it. My brothers, my family were all very supportive of me doing photo and video. My grandma especially, she was just like, you have to take the plunge and just do it in any sort of investment, like whether it's investing in a drone or a camera or microphones or whatever. Like if you feel that you'll make money and you really love it, then it's worth the time and the investment. And I'm very, very glad that I had a very supportive group of family members that really saw what I was doing.
That's awesome. And this is something I've really experienced recently, ever since I've started the YouTube channel and the podcast. And I started the YouTube channel before I finished grad school, but once I really finished grad school, I kind of went all in on it because I wasn't writing papers, I wasn't doing all these things. So I spend a lot more time on it now as opposed to when I started it about 1.5 years or so ago. And there's some people, some of my friends are like super supportive. They're like, that's awesome, great. Some of my friends, they don't understand the mission, the motive, what I'm trying to build and what I'm trying to do. And it's tough because, you know, sometimes people are like, let's go out, let's go do this. And, you know, I like to go out and have fun as much as the next guy, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't, I got to edit this video, or oh, I can't, I got a podcast. And they're just like, why? Like, what's the point? Like, you have, you know, X amount of people listening. It's not like you're Joe Rogan or anything like that. And I'm just like, well, if you have that mindset, that scarcity mindset that you're nothing, then you're always going to be nothing. Like, you have to, I literally have to treat this like I am essentially Joe Rogan. Like, and this is his podcast. Like, I have deadlines for myself, like, and all of these things. And I think that's the way you really have to go about it. And if you're not doing that, then you're probably not going to be successful with it. And I see people all the time. They start a podcast, they start a YouTube channel, they start this project, that project, and eventually they fizzle out and they miss one deadline, then they miss another deadline. Before you know it, it's like they're doing, one video a month, one podcast a month.
Yep.
Then they're doing one every couple months, and then before you know it, they're just not doing it anymore. And it can be really tough to stay motivated when you're not around people that are really supportive. And I think that's one of the best things you can do, really surround yourself with like-minded people. But at the end of the day, it does fall back on you, and you have to remember why you started this and focus on this mission. But anyway,
Totally.
Enough of that rant. Last question before we really move on to crypto here. How many hours do you spend doing this a week?
Photo and video, or just everything in general?
Both. Why don't you break the whole thing down?
Oh, okay. So in a week, probably about 30 to 40 hours of photo and video a week, easily. I mean, when I'm out on a shoot, like the easiest part is the shoot itself, typically. A shoot yeah, it usually is. It's like 1 to 4 hours, depending on what you're doing. It could be 8 or 10, depending on the projects. But editing, oh man, like the biggest chunk of my time is set in front of the screen, editing photos and videos, revisiting them, exporting them, checking in on things. I mean, like a photo shoot that is an hour photo shoot might take like 8 to 10 hours editing and post-production, or that, and that's the easier ones. Like the harder ones are like the ones where there's a lot of Photoshop involved and a lot of removal and a lot of backtracking, going back and forth and comparison, and then, deleting all over again, starting from scratch. And then with videos, you can film a music video in 8 hours, but then you have to sit down, especially if there's multiple cameras, if there's a lot of drone, a lot of coloring that goes into place, a lot of color matching. A music video can take 80 to 150 hours of editing. Like I have friends, and that's lucky for me. For me to finish a music video maybe like 50 to 80 hours, I would consider that pretty fast. Maybe underneath that 40 hours, but like some people I know will take weeks and maybe months to edit a video, because there's just so much love and work and going back and forth. And then also, I think the biggest thing too is like once you finish your first video, there's a lot of backtracking, saying like, okay, I didn't like how this looks, I didn't like how this movement goes, I want to replace this clip. Going back and forth with the client. The client will also have edits. They're going to want you to remove certain things. I don't like how my face looks, I don't like this movement, I don't like this color. Videos and things like that go through a lot. So like in a week, I would say like it's like a standard, like I have my full-time job, which is 40 hours a week. And then above that, like I'm editing. So like that's probably another 20 to 30 hours. So we're looking at like 60 to 70 hours. And maybe that'll include some of me going out for a shoot. So yeah, about 60 to 70 hours a week of work.
Now, I thought you were this was all you were focused on. I completely was unaware that you have another full-time job on top of this, which adds a whole nother element. Do you ever see yourself leaving that job to just focus on this? You do?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm getting to the point where I'm making as much as my full-time job, and my full-time job is creative. My full-time job is a senior creative role. I'm getting to the point where it's getting pretty close. And my hope is within the next year or two, like I'll get to a point where like I can completely leave my full-time job and just go all in on myself, by myself, and do everything on my own. So
that's awesome.
I'm very lucky where I have my full-time job, and I've had candid conversations where I'm like, hey, like I have other things on the side, and they're very supportive. I'm very lucky where my VP is very supportive of everything I do outside of work. They're very aware of my clients and everything else. As long as their work is done, then we're gravy, we're square. So I'm in a very fortunate role, but I am getting to a point where like I'm just getting very, very booked up, very, very busy. I'm getting to a point, and it's funny, like saying no to people is much easier now than it's ever been before. I remember, back in the day, I'm like, oh, I would never say no to a client, or I'd never say no to a project, and it's like now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, if it's not worth the amount of time that I have to take away from my friends and my family, or where I could be home, like I value my personal time way more than gigs now. The gig has to make sense for me to go and do it. If it's for something that I don't find reasonable, I will not sweat saying no. if somebody is trying to haggle me for a price, I don't even bother responding. Like when I have to, you have to look at yourself as like a premium service, and I think Zach Kravitz does a great job of explaining it. You can go buy a car, you could buy a 1980 Chevy, and it'll get you from point A to point B. Maybe it'll be a little bit more difficult. Maybe you're gonna have to change the oil. Maybe there's a lot of problems inside the interior. But if you treat yourself like a name brand, like it's about the experience that you're getting. Again, it goes back to earlier what we were saying. Like they could go to anybody in the industry. There's hundreds of thousands of photographers and videographers out there that do exactly what I do. But will they provide the same level of attention to detail? Will they make you feel good? Will they make sure that you feel comfortable during the shoot? Will they make sure that your project's taken care of? And that's how I look at myself. I look at my brand. When you work with Marvin, Media by Marvin, you're getting premium service. You're being taken care of. I'm gonna go above and beyond, make sure that everything is taken care of and that you're having fun, that your photos and your videos are gonna be delivered exactly how you are. And if there's something that I'm unable to do, I will find someone who can provide that service to make sure that your project's taken care of with utmost attention to detail.
That's incredible, man. That truly is inspiring, and that is honestly an awesome mindset to have. So anyway, moving on to something that I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in. Let's talk about crypto. So why don't you explain to everyone kind of what crypto is, because this is something I've never really discussed at any point on my channel. So why don't, for anyone out there thinking about getting in crypto, doesn't understand crypto, whatever the case may be, why don't we start from the fundamentals and go from the way up? So you have the floor, my good friend.
Yeah, so crypto can be seen in a bunch of different facets. What's fascinating about crypto, a lot of people will automatically think it's currency. But crypto can be a bunch of different things. I prefer to refer to it as crypto assets. So for example, we have Bitcoin, which is probably the most popular name, which is a medium of store of value. And we have a bunch of different other products like Ethereum, which is more used for projects where smart contracts, where you can develop applications on top of Ethereum. So it's technology. Or other projects like VeChain, that's another huge crypto where it's supply chain management, where we're able to track projects and products and authenticate that they were created when they were and connected to the blockchain. So crypto is typically a use of a form of exchange where you can put your money into a project, develop it, and then develop coins, and each coin has its own coin economics behind it, or tokenomics, depending on its supply, its circulating supply. So all of that. So cryptocurrency, all in all, is basically store value. It can be a store of value. It could be a medium of exchange, and it can be so much more. And what I love about crypto is that it's technology as well. So it's innovation in ways that we've never seen before. And it's decentralized, which is, I think, the most important thing. There is no one person who regulates it, who oversees it, who controls it. It is spread out through the entirety of the world. You know, the US government doesn't oversee it, China doesn't oversee it, Russia doesn't oversee it. You know, it's developed by a number of nodes all around the world, and it's absolutely incredible. It's a technology we've never seen before, and it's shaping up to be something that I think that will revolutionize, you know, finance or decentralized finance, but also technology in ways that we've never ever seen before. And what I love about it is that it's continuing to evolve and being used in creative ways that we've never seen before, like NFTs. There's that huge craze right now with non-fungible tokens and art. And for creative artists too, like 3D artists are making money that they've never seen before because of crypto. So crypto, all in all, can be used in so many different ways. It can be used as currency, store of value, and digital assets and technology that can be tied to the blockchain. So crypto can be a lot of different things. It's a very, very broad and huge market that is continuing to grow more and more every single day.
Now, how did you get into this, and when did you get into this exactly?
Yeah, so I got into crypto back in January. So that's when the whole meme stock craze started to happen with GameStop, and people were starting to talk into AMC, which is a whole different regret of my life because I'll get into that in a little bit. But I remember hearing about Dogecoin, and I got into Dogecoin like at a penny. And I remember I was like, whoa, like this is really cool. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And I remember like getting my friends into Dogecoin at a penny, and like it got up to like 9 cents. So like my $500 that I put into Dogecoin like turned into $5,000 like overnight. It was absolutely insane. And then I really didn't do any research for a while, and I made some money. I sold off at like 4 cents. Which was a terrible idea, like later down the road, hindsight is 2020. And then I bought into AMC at like $14. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get rich because, I saw how GameStop worked out. And then it like plummeted to like $7 or $8. And I was like, oh no, my $2,000 is now $1,000. And then I didn't understand the idea of dollar cost averaging and bring down your overall cost down. And I learned that a little too late. So then my average cost was like $11. And then AMC eventually got to $14, and I was like, oh, I'm in the green. And it got down back down to $10, and I like panic sold at like a $60 loss. Had I just like held on for like 2 months, that's when AMC went to the moon and went to $70. So my $2,000 would have been like almost 12 grand had I not sold at a $60 loss. And and that's when I bought into Bitcoin a little bit, and I started to do more and more research into crypto. And then after May 15th, that's where there was a massive sell-off because of the massive exodus of the China. Bitcoin miners were leaving China, so the hash rate dropped. So everything kind of went down insanely. Like Bitcoin was at 65 and it dropped down to lowest of 29K. And I didn't understand. That's the thing. I didn't understand the market fundamentals. I didn't understand what was going on and how actually that is the best thing that's ever happened to crypto and Bitcoin, especially that China's miners left and that this fall happened because Bitcoin was on a tear for 6 months with no form of pullback. And any sort of market, you want to see any sort of stock kind of go up, go down, have a healthy retracement, and kind of go up and down, but in a healthy way. Whereas Bitcoin, for example, was going straight up for 7 months with no sort of pullback. It would pull back like 8%, but Bitcoin had gone up like 2,000%. It was insane. Like Bitcoin rallied 20x from $3,000 to $65,000 with no sort of healthy pullback. And then it had a major pullback of 50% because with anything in life, if you go all out nonstop, you're gonna crash insanely. Like I think about powerlifting. If you run on pre-workout and sugar candy and try to PR every single rep, you're gonna bomb eventually. If you're able to kind of like stagnate and like take your time with healthy pullbacks, then you have a healthier market. And when the crypto market really crashed for the last 3 months, that's where I really went into research and understanding, the fundamentals of Bitcoin, what Bitcoin actually is and what it isn't, what Dogecoin is and what it isn't, what these other projects in crypto are and what they're not. And just understand the history and the trajectory of it and seeing the massive adoption that's currently taking place and seeing that, Bitcoin has been the best performing class asset over the last 12 years. If you bought gold like 10 years ago, it's actually down from 10 years ago. Like it's actually devalued. And Bitcoin is the most outperforming class asset in the last 12 years. And seeing where it's going and seeing where the smart money is going, and with banks adopting it more and more and providing it as a financial service to their wealthy clients and now to retail clients, it's like, okay, crypto is going to be here to stay for a while.
Yeah, that is interesting, I would say. That's a pretty cool story. But which cryptos do you own? I'm assuming Bitcoin is one of them based on what you were just saying, but which other ones do you own and which ones are you really bullish on?
Yeah, so cryptos that I'm currently bullish on, I'm very bullish on the market. I think right now we are in the middle of beginning of the rest of the bull cycle, but Bitcoin, I'm very bullish on. Ethereum especially now with the London hard fork, which makes it deflationary. So Ethereum is produced every single day. And before, when you would use it to mint an NFT or anything like that, it would be a gas fee, so you'd be paying gas fees, but now it's burn fees. So now we're starting to see it as a deflationary asset. So they're burning about like $1.5 million of Ethereum every single day. So there's less and less Ethereum in circulation. So if there's higher demand, less supply, to the moon. Cardano is another smart contract play that I'm very, very interested and very bullish on. More projects, Solana, that is a protocol. So there's a whole like ecosystem built off Solana. Binance Coin is another one. So Binance is the largest exchange for crypto, and they have their own coin, and apps are built off of it. So using that as a fundamental, like that is a very, very strong coin that I hold dearly in my portfolio. VeChain is the one that I mentioned earlier. It's the best of its class in terms of supply chain management and understanding where, how to authenticate, you know, any sort of product. So let's say you buy a used Louis Vuitton bag off eBay. It's very easy to get, you know, scammed on eBay or buying something secondhand. Let's say that Louis Vuitton uses VeChain to lock its authenticity onto the blockchain. So you know when it was made, where it was made, how it was made, and when it was sent and purchased. You're able to figure out all that on the blockchain. So it's all locked onto the blockchain. So you can use that in a bunch of different scenarios. That's just one. And then it also has smart technology like, let's say you have technology in wine, and you have wine that is distilled at a certain temperature, X, Y, and Z. VeChain has the sort of technology that can kind of provide information that says, like, if you want to optimize how your wine is made or cooled, like, here are some protocols that we found based off of that. Another one that I'm very bullish is Chainlink. Chainlink is an oracle. So what that does is, let's say you and I bet that tomorrow it's going to rain. We both put down $1,000 that tomorrow is going to rain. What Chainlink does is it scours the internet, and you pay a small fee, and it'll talk to other oracles and gather information across all the internet on whether or not it rained that day. So let's say I'm a pro hacker and I hack into yahoo.com and weather.com and say that, you know, it's actually going to snow tomorrow. Then I would have won that smart contract between you and I, because you bet that it was going to rain, I bet that it wasn't. It actually snowed. I put that into the computer, then buy that smart contract, then you owe me $1,000. What oracles do is that authenticates across the internet whether or not it rained that day. So though I hacked Yahoo, it's going to check with other oracles to make sure that we were correct and that, you know, that smart contract played out the way it was supposed to be. And Chainlink is one of the best ones out there, if not the best one. Those are just a couple. I have a bunch of other ones. I have a couple of degenerate ones on my portfolio, but those are the ones off the top of my head that are like my favorite coins right now.
So where does this conviction come from? Because that's kind of where I'm at with cryptocurrency. Yeah. I think the idea is very appealing. I really like it. I don't think it's going away, but at the same time, I don't have that high of conviction. So try to sell me, kind of tell me, why is crypto going to be around forever and ever and ever?
Yeah, so it's a speculative asset class, that's for sure. And maybe it's going to be here forever, maybe it won't, but I truly believe that it will be. And the reason that is because over the last 10 to 12 years, and even if we go back 20, 30, 40 years, I think about, you know, inflation, right? I think that's been a huge topic, especially right now. I drove by McDonald's the other day and I saw a flyer that, you know, they're hiring workers for $16 an hour. And I stopped to think to myself, I'm like, well, did the job get harder or is the dollar getting weaker? And if we take a look, you know, more and more money is being printed. And what can we do to preserve our wealth or invest our money? You know, real estate, stocks, and then there's also cryptocurrency. And especially with Bitcoin, I guess I'll just focus on Bitcoin for now as a store of value. I think why I'm so convinced that Bitcoin's going to be here for a while is that there's only a set amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist in circulation, 21 million Bitcoin. And every 4 years, there's this thing called the halving event. And what that does is that every 4 years, the difficulty of mining Bitcoin gets harder and harder. So it halves. So for example, right now, 400 Bitcoin could be mined a day. In 4 years, that's going to be 200 Bitcoin will be mined a day. And then 4 years after that, it goes more and more and more into the halving until there's no more Bitcoin left in circulation. And with Bitcoin, it's a medium store of value. I mean, you can use it, but I think the true value of it comes into the idea of, you know, what can we preserve our wealth into? And I think a lot of people say like, well, why don't you just invest in stocks? Like that is a great option, absolutely. But with stocks, with trading cards, with precious metals or anything, you know, the human race decided that gold for some reason is a shiny pebble that we want to put value behind. You know, the dollar was backed behind the dollar, but backed by gold up until 1971. Like that's just one example. And right now the dollar's just value backed up by the dollar, which, you know, as there's more dollars in circulation, then the value of it goes down. And with Bitcoin, what we're starting to see is a massive adoption, you know, across the world, with El Salvador, Paraguay coming up, using it as a store of value, but also to be used as a means of exchange to be able to purchase things. I think why I love Bitcoin especially is that it's going to be able to provide a level playing field. You know, if you go to the bank right now and ask to take $10,000 out, can you? I don't know. Try and go and ask, like, see what happens. They're going to ask why you want your money, and then it'll take 2 to 3 days for you to actually get your cash back. And if you didn't know this, like, banks aren't required to hold your money. Like, they're actually allowed to go and lend it out. Like, you make, what, 0.01% in interest on your savings account when they're lending out your money for 10 to 20% and making money off your money. And I think that there's so many people that are unbanked. And what Bitcoin does, it removes all those walls and provides opportunities for people who are unbanked, who don't have access to finance, who are in third world countries that, you know, their currency is based off the US dollar. And if we're inflating our own dollar, you know, countries are again destroyed because of the US dollar, and they have no way of regulating that because they're not a part of the United States of America. And with Bitcoin, as more and more adoption and we see more institutional investment go into Bitcoin, I think we're going to start to see, you know, Bitcoin, especially as just one of great of many examples of institutional adoption, understand that this is a great way to store your wealth and store your value. And we see that with JP Morgan, we see that with PNC Bank recently, they just adopted it. And we see it more and more with, you know, countries and other major entities starting to buy and store their wealth in Bitcoin. And that's just one example. You know, there are many other great currencies and other ways to store your value. But I think with Bitcoin, as we start to see that, you know, people are looking for things to invest in. They're looking into scarce assets to invest in because they're trying to make money. Like, that's all it is. You're just trying to make money, sell your stuff to someone who finds more value in it. You know, that stock market, that is land, that's almost everything. That's almost anything you want to sell and trade, you know, selling it to someone for more. And I think with Bitcoin being at only 21 million, and that's if nobody had lost their Bitcoin. Think about the millions of people who have locked themselves out of their Bitcoin, that have died, that don't have their Bitcoin. There's not that much Bitcoin left in circulation. So owning a piece of Bitcoin, as we start to see more and more adoption and Congress talk about cryptocurrency, crypto is going to be here for a while, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more and more adoption in the next couple of months and years with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well.
Now, how do you kind of feel about the idea of the government regulating Bitcoin?
I think smart regulation is great. I think that understanding that, you know, people, I think being taxed on crypto, I think is probably the best thing ever, because that means there's legitimacy behind cryptocurrency. I think with smart regulations, it's actually really, really healthy. I don't think it's smart when, you know, we have senators talking about, you know, taxing or not allowing there to be staking pools, or, you know, considering anyone who is a developer as a broker, because that's not the case if you're developing. Like, why should you be a broker? Or ensuring like KYC or know your customer. Like if you have a staking pool and people are putting, and staking, by the way, is when, let's say you have a crypto and you put it into this pool. What this does, it creates a liquidity pool where other people can borrow your cryptocurrency and you get paid in interest on it. So for example, you can stake Cardano or Ethereum into Coinbase and get paid 8% based off your Ethereum. 8% is a lot of money compared to what you can get almost anywhere else in terms of interest. And it's almost impossible because, you know, when you're on a ledger, you know, you're considered anonymous. So it's impossible to get everyone's information. So if we have Senator and Congress who really understand how blockchain works and understand, you know, the differences between, you know, a borrower and a broker and, you know, developers and all the good stuff that really comes with crypto and doesn't inhibit innovation, I think that's the best thing forever because that completely legitimizes crypto. And I think that's the biggest thing is the skepticism of cryptocurrency is what, you know, it prohibits it from being exactly what it is because a lot of people are scared of it because they don't fully understand it. And to take time to educate yourself and learn on it. You know, we saw that with the internet. You know, I was actually on Twitter earlier today, and you know, before the internet, people were calling it like a fad or calling it something silly. And I think that's kind of like the adoption that cryptocurrency is going to be. It's going to be overnight. Like soon enough, a lot of people are going to be dabbling into crypto. They're going to be storing money into crypto and understand that sometimes the bank isn't always necessary. There's a lot of people in the middle that are profiting from our money and just kind of like our day-to-day lives where we could just kind of remove the middleman and give power back to the people.
Interesting. That's a very interesting take on it. And where do you see, we'll take Bitcoin for this example here, where do you see Bitcoin's market cap being, say, 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I think right now we're sitting at just under $1 trillion. I think we're at like $900 billion for market cap. In 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised. So if we're at 900 billion right now and Bitcoin is priced at like 46,000 a coin, in 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised to see a market cap of $4 to $6 trillion, to be honest.
Really? Think it has that much upside? Wow.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 1 trillion, so the total market cap of crypto right now is 1.9 trillion. We're just under $2 trillion right now. To give you an idea, gold is at about $11 trillion in terms of market cap. And gold isn't performing very well. Bitcoin is outperforming gold by a long shot. And the thing is, there's a set supply of Bitcoin. And I think as we continue to see more and more institutional adoption and more countries start to adopt Bitcoin, it's going to be huge. I mean, right now, 1 in 30 people are in crypto. You know, mass adoption starts to take place when 1 in 7 people are in it. And I don't think we're that far off, to be honest. Like, if we take a look at where crypto was 12 years ago and now, Bitcoin has only been here for 12 years, mind you. Like, to think that a class that was under $1 or under, like, that was worth pennies is now worth $46,000, $47,000 now.
Right.
There's a lot of upside, and I think it's not too late. I think when it's too late will be when it's in massive adoption. I think more and more people are getting into crypto now than ever because it's global. It's not locked to, you know, just the United States. Anybody can get into it. And when you start to think about it from a global perspective and not just around the United States of America, I think a lot of us, including myself, start to think that, you know, the world revolves around just the U.S. But think about the billions and billions of people around the world that may be able to get access to a class. You know, a great example that I think about all the time is, you know, my parents immigrated from Guatemala to the United States. All the money that they had from Guatemala to the United States had to be smuggled in, or they would be questioned about the money that they have. But now we have this way of transmitting money from country to country with no sort of regulation. Money that you work hard for that doesn't have to be taken away. You know, a Bitcoin here is a Bitcoin there. A Bitcoin in the United States is a Bitcoin in China. And that gives people a level playing field to gain, you know, a life. You know, people in third world countries, you know, El Salvador is in insane amount of debts because of the IMF. I think it stands for the International Monetary Fund. Basically, the IMF gives El Salvador, all these amounts of charitable amounts of money, but they have these insane amounts of tax rates and interest rates on top of that. So essentially, El Salvador will always be in debt to the IMF. They'll never be able to pay these off. But now with adopting Bitcoin, it's a new stream of revenue. Being able to mine Bitcoin using volcanoes, being able to mine Bitcoin and have this other asset class, they're going to be able to pay off their debts and be out of the clutches of these insane, like interest loans and things like that. So I think it's going to set a lot of countries free from a lot of debt that they're in.
Wow, that was very eye-opening. This has been very eye-opening, and this is something I'm definitely going to have to take a deep diver into, because it seems like the opportunity is there, and based off of what you're saying, the money's there to be made.
Yeah.
But you prefer crypto over stocks, correct?
No, not necessarily. So
Really?
I'm much more into crypto right now, but I am planning on getting way more into stocks, because I'm at the point right now where I'm very happy with where my portfolio is in crypto, and there will be a point where I do take and reap profits, but I also believe in being diversified. I think that's probably the best thing that you can do. Like right now, I'm fully into crypto, and I don't own stocks right now, but I do want to take some of my earnings and diversify that into stocks. Like, I want to be in Microsoft, and there's a bunch of different things. Like I also want to have stock in S&P 500. I also have my 401k and other things as well. But I do think it's incredibly important to be diversified. I think right now, for where I think the market is in crypto, it's very, very bullish, and we're going to be going into a period where there's a lot of gains to be made, and I do want to take advantage of that. And once I take advantage of that, I do want to move some of those earnings into different stocks and things like that. But I think having a diversified portfolio is probably the best thing that you can do for yourself, whether it's in stocks, real estate,
I agree.
Precious metals, or crypto. I think being diversified is incredibly important.
Do you currently own any stocks at all, or is this something that you're going to work towards, I guess, diversifying more?
I'm going to be working towards that much more. I mean, I did own stock. I mean, I did own Tesla, I owned Palantir, I owned Senseonics. There's a bunch of other stuff. I mean, AMC, Jumia, lots of different things. But American Airlines, that was a terrible idea. But I guess I didn't understand at that point, and I think moving forward, going in with this mindset of long-term and not seeking immediate returns is the most important thing. I mean, now that I'm way more in tap with what's going on in the world and just kind of where I want to see my portfolio and what I want it to represent, just being way more patient. I think that's the thing that I had to learn the hard way. It was understanding patience with your investments, that things don't happen overnight. Unless you're a swing trader and you're looking to trade, then by all means, do what you got to do. But for me, I'm not good at that whatsoever. I know nothing about it, and I rather invest and not think about it. I rather set it and forget it.
Right. I agree completely. I don't like day trading. I don't like swing trading. I don't think that is for me. I also think I would be better at it now if I gave it another shot, but I don't really have an interest in pursuing that at this time. But you make a very good point. Those who are patient, at the end of the day, they get paid. And I think that's something a lot of great investors would agree with, and a lot of great investors would say. But let's talk about your podcast a little bit, and then we'll get into a little bit about work and life balance, and then we'll wrap up, and I'll let you go here. So your podcast revolves around crypto. Does it revolve around a specific type of crypto, or is it just Bitcoin? Is it just Ethereum? Is it the whole crypto market? How many hours a week do you spend researching for that podcast? Why don't you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so What's Good Crypto is really about what's going on, everything in crypto. And what I like to cover is kind of a daily market cap of taking a look at, daily action. Let's take a look at the top 20 top 20 coins. So that includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Dogecoin. I lightly touch on XRP, Chainlink, Uniswap, Solana, Trying to think of other ones. I mean, Litecoin's up there. I don't like talking about really stable coins because there's really no point in them other than just them being a dollar. So I like to take a look at the top 2025 and kind of see what's emerging and going on in crypto and just the topics that are going on. So the news, the catalysts, taking a look at what's going on in terms of like, right now we had the infrastructure bill that had cryptocurrency on it, which is really, really like huge and awesome. It's awesome to see that, you know, crypto's going through Congress. Like this is really, really bullish. Like we're finally getting spotlight. Before people wouldn't give us the day, like light of day or time of day. And it's cool to see that, you know, people are talking about it. So I like to kind of go over, you know, what's the sentiment of the market? What's the overall, like, how are things trending? How are people talking about it? I like to go into depth about the crypto fear and greed index. And that's essentially just kind of like an estimate of, you know, how the market is talking about crypto. You know, is it overly fearful? Is it positive? Is it neutral? And just talk about everything that I go on. And in terms of the amount of hours that I spend on my podcast usually revolves between 15 to 25 minutes, but the research that goes into it, you know, I listen to about 3 to 5 podcasts a day on crypto. So, you know, I have my morning podcast. What I like to do in the morning is, you know, there's one YouTube channel that I like called Lark Davis, who likes to break down the news in a very simple way. And I like to listen to 2 to 3 different TAs, technical analysts or chartists, whatever you want to call them. And they're the traders. And the reason why I think it's incredibly important to listen to 3 to 5 different traders is because the people that are aggressively trading, that are trading on leverage, who are shorting or long in the market, getting their feel of what's going on. When people are trading insanely and trading shorts, you know, typically that's like a very bearish trend, like, okay, the market's kind of going down. The people are betting that the market's going down. And what I love to hear, and this was actually a very bullish indicator for me, someone that very much is into shorting the market is starting to long the market and is like, I'm not taking any shorts right now. And when I start to listen to these patterns starting to take place, I'm like, okay, you know, we're starting to see a shift. Like people are starting, the people that are actively trading, not me, I don't trade, but the people who are actively trading, who are like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna sideline for a while and just, you know, take a long position or just buy my Bitcoin and just hold. You know, I like to kind of get an idea of what the traders are doing. I like to kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is where these traders are going. And especially the bears, like the intense bears that are like, oh, it's going down, that are starting to say, I don't know, like I'm not shorting anytime soon. That gives me an indicator. And then by lunchtime, I probably have listened to like 5 different kind of like TAs, a lot of different news outlets. I like to go on CoinDesk and a bunch of different places, Cryptos R Us, to kind of take a look at what's going on in the market. But then when I'm bored, I'll take a look at what's going on in specific cryptos and kind of like what new, you know, adoption stories are going on or what new upgrades are going on. Like the London hard fork was a major one for Ethereum. And like seeing that, like typically when things happen in the news, it's usually a buy the rumor, sell the news event. And for like the first time, and now especially with Cardano, like Cardano was seen as a ghost chain, which means that, you know, it was this project and everybody's talking about it, but there's nothing to back it up. And on Friday, they announced that smart contracts, which allows for basically all the apps that have been working on Cardano, are finally going to launch on September 12th. And now we see this major, insane rally where Cardano was like literally like $1 and now it's at like $2.20, which is like 2x everything. And that's before the implementation of smart contracts. Same with Ethereum. Ethereum was at $1,700 back July 21st, and we're now at $3,200. And it's because the scarcity of these projects and these tokens continue to increase. Like there's less and less of these projects, or there's less in circulation, so everybody's just looking to hold on to them. So yeah, I listen to a lot of stuff throughout the day to just educate myself.
It seems like you definitely put in a lot of work, and I think that's people who are more consumers of content and not content creators, they take that for granted because they might see, you know, a 20-minute podcast, they might see a 15-minute video. They don't understand the hours that go in behind the scenes of listening, learning, planning, all of those different things But you have, it seems like, a pretty good following. I saw you recently just hit 10,000 followers on Instagram. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But how do you plan on growing this podcast? Do you have any plans of your own, or are you just going to essentially utilize the following that you already have and just continue to grow it that way?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting because, you know, when I started my podcast, like, you can see, like, you get 1 or 2 listens, and then it continues to grow more and more and more. But ways that I plan on leveraging social media, I mean, using my Instagram, advertising myself. I'm very active on Twitter as well with other content creators that are in the crypto space, or just people that are into crypto. I'm just actively chatting with them because we have things in common. I love taking a look at their charts, or, you know, funny memes. Like, I love sharing memes on Twitter. And then I also like advertise my own podcast there. But I think another avenue that I plan on growing it is through YouTube as well, and using the YouTube algorithm to grow my podcast, because I love podcasts. I love them as a means of absorbing information. I love having podcasts in the background, but I also love watching YouTube videos, especially where crypto and with graphs and information is really presented on a chart. That's where a podcast can kind of be difficult, but whereas I'm more talking about just a generality, and then being able to enhance that experience with YouTube, that's what I'm hoping on doing. But I use Twitter and Instagram to really leverage my following, and just also engaging and interacting. I'm very open and love talking to people and educating and providing, you know, if I don't have an answer, I'm more than happy to, you know, show them a YouTube video that could explain everything that I say 10 times better than I can, because I feel like I'm a sponge. Like, I love listening to all these different crypto analysts and just different means of information and absorbing it and spilling it out in a very easy way to understand it, because there's a lot of technicalities, there's a lot of advanced, you know, forms of information on crypto that are very important, but sometimes may be a deterrent to the average listener, or it could be a little too advanced and they're like, okay, this is clearly too hard for me to understand. But when you break it down to its basics, it really isn't that difficult. Everyone can understand it, and I'm trying to break down that barrier of difficulty. I want this to be an inclusive space where everyone has access to information. I don't want it to seem like it's a secret club. Like, everyone should have access to this information. Like, everyone should be educated on it. And whether it's investing in stocks or, you know, crypto, like, for example, like, I remember before I invested into any sort of stock, I thought you need to have a broker. I thought you need to do this or take a class in it. Like, it always seems so much more difficult than it is, but, like, it really isn't. I mean, trading stocks and everything is difficult, but, like, had my parents known that, like, oh, you know, they could have invested in something years ago, they would have had something to show for it. And I feel like showing people that, you know, you can get involved, like, you can start getting into trading or just investing into some of your favorite companies right now, like Robinhood or Webull. Like, you can start buying pieces of companies or own stock in something right now. Like, anybody can do it. Like, you just need to open up an account and buy it. Like, you can do these things.
Right. That is a very good point I think you made about really breaking things down and make them as simple as possible. And I think that's something people really struggle to do a lot, is starting at the beginning. Because when you think about it, it's so big, it's kind of overwhelming to try and find a starting point.
Absolutely.
Like, right now I'm looking into starting both an energy drink company and a coffee company. And I'm in the very early stages of that research process. And I'm not starting with, you know, manufacturers. I'm not starting with any of that jazz, any of those different things. Any of those things I will need eventually. I'm starting at the ingredients of coffee, like really learning the insides and out. What does Dunkin' put in coffee? How does Dunkin' make coffee? How does Monster make their energy drinks? How much of this ingredient do they put in? How much of the caffeine do they have in there? Like, all of these things. And I feel like that's so important when you're first starting, to really break things down and really start from the most simplest angle possible. Nick made a great point when he was on a podcast a couple weeks ago. He said people who are trying to lose weight and trying to count macros, like, they want to lose 20 pounds immediately, but it doesn't work like that. You have to go back to the beginning. You have to find out what a calorie is. You have to find out how many calories per carb, how many calories per protein. You have to understand how to calculate your macros. There's a lot that goes into it that people really do not understand.
Yep. Totally.
All right, a couple more things before I let you go here. Let's talk about work-life balance a little bit. So you have your hands in a lot of things between your side gig, your main job, as well as the podcast. How do you manage all of these things? And do you ever feel burnt out? And if you do feel burnt out, how do you deal with burnout and how are you able to bring yourself back to reality, back in check and say, okay, let's move forward, let's keep grinding, let's keep going?
Yeah, so I mean, time management is probably the most important thing. Like, I'm waking up earlier than I thought I would be, like, especially now that I work from home. I was like, oh, I'll sleep until 7 or 8. And I do have days like that, but
right.
I find that if I wake up at 6 or 6:30, I get so much more accomplished in the day.
Absolutely.
Like having a dog has honestly been one of the best things for my time management. Like, I'm forced to wake up early because
right.
now that it's summer, I have to walk him in the morning because he has a heavy fur coat. So it's not about me anymore. It's about him.
Right.
And then, you know, I know my first meeting's at 9. And I'm like, okay, like, while I'm on this walk, let's be productive. Or when I'm cooking, let's put on a podcast or a YouTube. Or I want to catch up on my crypto. Let's see what's going on in the world. I kind of like absorb some information there. And then while I'm on the walk, I catch up on, you know, this is an hour walk, and most podcasts that I listen to are like 30, 45 minutes. So I can go through maybe 3 or 4 podcasts by the time it's even 7:30.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, it's 7:30. I have 30 minutes until work. Let's crank out a podcast. And I know my shortcuts on creating a podcast. It's very simple for me now. So like, I jump on. As I'm walking, I'm listening to the news. I'm like, okay, this is an important topic to cover. What do I think about this? This is my take on it. Da 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 da. By the time I even start my podcast, I typically already have a set of, this is what I'm going to talk about. This is kind of my general idea of what's going on in the market. Right. Let's take a look at the crypto fear and greed index. Let's talk about the sentiment, what's going on, what are traders doing, and let's talk about what's going on in the news. By the time it's 8 o'clock, we're working. I'm working from 8 to 12. I go to the gym at 12. It's 1 o'clock. Work from 1 to 5. 5 o'clock comes, and then like I edit a little bit more. And then by that time, my fiance comes home and we're chilling, we're having dinner, and it's a good time. But there have been a lot of periods of burnout. I will not lie. Like, I've gotten, I think it was earlier this year or last year, I got down with this really bad work fever where I had been nonstop for like 12 days, where like I'd been filming almost every other day, editing every single day, and staying up night. And I worked myself sick, where I had to call out for 5 days and just kind of like cool down. And my fiance, she's amazing, and my mom too. Like, they both call me and check up on me, and they're like, hey, make sure you're drinking water, make sure you're taking time for yourself,
right.
And not do anything work related. And it's sometimes really hard for me because that's all I kind of like trained myself to do, is just work. But taking time to like sit down and just take a nap, or sit down and literally meditate, play video games, go for a walk, it really makes a huge difference. And you know, some days you're just not motivated creatively, and you can't force creative, you know, you can't be creative all the time. And I think that the worst projects and the worst pieces of art that I've created were the times where I forced creativity, and the best ones where it just came naturally. And that's where the best pieces of art come from, or where it comes from the heart, and you're like, I want to do this and not because I have to do this. So, you know, yeah, I have gone burnt out several times. I've burnt out sick. And I have friends too. One of my best friends, Zach, we've talked, and he's like, yeah, man, I'm just so run down. Like, I've been going nonstop, and you have to take time for yourself to kind of chill out, take a rest, reset, recalibrate, and take time off. Like, I know later this year, there's going to be like a solid 2 weeks where I don't take any clients, and I'm not going to force any sort of editing. Maybe I'll do podcasts, but 2 weeks where I just don't even want to think about anything for anyone, just because I need that time to recalibrate and make sure it's good for me. Like, I did that earlier this year. I really didn't have any projects for a month and a half for January and February, but I was so happy like that I did that, because then after that I was just insanely busy from February till now. Still am. But I needed that month of just kind of like boredom, because I'm not going to remember what that feeling's like for a while.
Right. I think that's so important, to remember to take time for yourself, to remember it's okay to do nothing. And this is something I've had a lot of issues with as well, because especially working, you know, a job 8 hours a day right now, it can be difficult to really take time for yourself, because every hour is meaningful because you only have so much that you can dedicate to it. So I'm trying to take a day off where it's like I don't think about YouTube, I don't think about the podcast. But sometimes that's very hard right now, because although some people, they're like, hey, I can come on the podcast Wednesday at 8 o'clock. It's like, in a perfect world, that's fantastic. We can do it early in the morning. Unfortunately, that doesn't work with my schedule right now. So I am trying to find a day. Sundays really appeal to me, a day where it's like, hey, no alarm, get up whatever time you want, watch some TV, go for a walk, go for a run. Don't worry about that. But again, as of right now, it's very, very difficult. It's very hard to find that time. But along the same lines, like I just said, you need to find that time to some degree, because otherwise you're going to get burnt out and you're just going to be counterproductive, I feel, at the end of the day. But do you have any sort of, I guess, set time where you cut everything off, where you're like, okay, look, I have to stop. I need to put this away. I need to go to bed. I can't do this anymore because I feel myself getting frustrated. I feel myself getting burnt out. Do you have any sort of, I guess, self-deadline for that?
Yeah, typically, especially during the work week, I try to stop any sort of work after 6 p.m. I really like to take that time to be with my family, with my dog, with my fiance. Like, after 6 o'clock, it's dinner time. We hang out, watch TV, go for a nice walk in the neighborhood, and just relax. So I like to do 6 p.m. during the week. On the weekends, sometimes I have to work. It's just the nature of it. But I really try to limit that to 3 to 4 hours, if anything, on the weekend, just because, I have family obligations. I have other things going on. But if I know my fiance is doing homework, for example, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this. She'll do homework in my office, and I'll just edit while she is doing homework. So we'll kind of like collaborate there and just like do our stuff there. But I really try to make a point at 6 p.m. during the work week, like, all right, all work is done, unless it's like a tight deadline and something urgent came up. That is a very rare instance. But like I have like some nights like I just can't sleep. So there have been times where like I'll wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning and just start my day and just start editing. I'm like, okay, Ozzy's asleep. He's not going to wake up until like 6:30 or 7. And Julie's asleep. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get out of bed and I'm just going to go into the office, put some music on, and just edit. Everybody's asleep, so I'm not bothering anyone. So sometimes I just wake up early, and if my day starts early, then great. If not, then no. But respecting 6 o'clock for me is really, really huge, because I need that time away from the computer. My eyes get really tired now, which I need like the blue light glasses.
That's what these are. They're blue light glasses. Game changer.
Yeah, I really need to get a pair, because my eyes get so tired. I just feel exhausted all the time. So taking care of myself and understanding time away from the computer, and sometimes just you can't be creative all the time, and being okay with that. I think understand that it's okay not to be creative some days. Like some days you just need to pull back and chill out.
Right. It's okay to be a human some days. Well, Marvin, man, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I really had a great time talking about all this stuff with you. It really opened my eyes to a lot of different avenues and a lot of different pathways that I think are possible. I am going to do some more work on that crypto. I can't guarantee I'm going to buy into it, but I am going to dig a little bit into it, because you did really start to piece some things together that I don't think I completely pieced together. So why don't you tell everyone where they can find you if they want to learn more about you, or if they want to follow your work or anything like that?
Yeah, if you guys want to connect with me, my Instagram is @MediaByMarvin, and if you guys want to connect with me on Twitter, it's also @MediaByMarvin. I love tweeting, I love talking to people and interacting and engaging. But if you guys want to check out my podcast, it's What's Good Crypto.
Awesome. Marvin, again, thanks so much. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully you can come on again sometime, and maybe we can even link up and do it in person. I think it'd be so much fun. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you do, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and download if you listen to this on Spotify or Apple Music, and I'll see you guys in the next one.